Okay, so today we're going to tell you a story. It's based on the sources you shared, and it's about this tradition from overseas. Honestly, it's pretty strange and quite unsettling, too.
Yeah, it really is. It's a practice that goes way back, like thousands of years, all tied up in these ancient ideas about the afterlife and what the living, owe to the dead.
So our plan here is to walk you through what the sources say. Look at where it came from, the different ways it happens, and, well, the darker side of it all.
Exactly. So you can really understand what this whole thing is about.
All right, prepare yourselves, because, this gets interesting. The sources call it Minghun, or sometimes Peku.
Peku, but most people just translate it as ghost marriage.
Ghost marriage, and you said it's old.
Oh, incredibly old. The sources track it back like over 3,000 years, back to China's Shang Dynasty. So we're talking maybe 1600 BC, somewhere around there.
Wow.
And the really striking thing is, despite being that old, the sources are clear. It hasn't completely died out. It's still practiced in some places.
3,000 years of ghost weddings. That's kind of wild. So how does it work? I mean, the sources talk about different types, right? What's the main one?
Well, the most common form, according to what we read, is when a ghost marries another ghost.
Okay, ghost marrying ghost. So what's the thinking there? Why arrange a marriage for someone who's already passed?
It really comes down to this deep-seated belief. If a young person, man or woman, dies before getting married, the family worries. They fear the spirit will be restless, lonely, and an unhappy, unmarried spirit. Well, the belief is it might haunt the family, cause bad luck, illness, maybe even, ruin the family line.
Right. So the marriage is supposed to stop that, settle the spirit down.
Exactly. It's seen as giving them what they missed out on in life, a partner, helping them find peace in the afterlife, which in turn protects the living family.
I see. It's like spiritual risk management for the family. So how do they even set this up? A ghost wedding.
The sources actually detail the process. It usually starts with the family of the deceased man. They'll hire a matchmaker.
A matchmaker? Like for a regular wedding?
Pretty much, yeah. And the matchmaker's job is to find a suitable, deceased young woman.
Suitable. Okay, what makes one ghost suitable for another?
It's quite involved, based on the sources. They look at things you'd expect: age, family background, social standing. But also, crucially, horoscopes are checked for compatibility.
Horoscopes for ghosts.
And sometimes they even look at old photos from when they were alive. Often a few expert gets involved too, kind of acting as a go-between for the families, making sure everything aligns spiritually.
It sounds incredibly formal, almost bureaucratic, despite, everyone involved being deceased in this case. What about the ceremony? You can't exactly have them walk down the aisle.
Right. So the sources say the ceremonies often look a lot like weddings for the living, but instead of the actual people, they use effigies, stand-ins.
Effigies, like dolls.
Sort of, often made from paper or bamboo, sometimes cloth. They represent the bride and groom.
Paper stand-ins. Okay, that paints a picture. A slightly eerie one. What else happens? Any specific rituals?
Oh yeah. A big part is burning offerings. Things made of paper, like miniature houses, furniture, fake money, other goods.
Why burn them?
The belief is that burning sends these items to the spirit world, so the couple can, use them in their afterlife together. It's like equipping their new home.
Okay, so that's ghost marrying ghost. It's strange, but it feels sort of contained within the spirit world. But you mentioned another form, one that involves the living.
That's right. And this is where, for many people listening, it might feel a lot more unsettling. The sources describe cases where a living person marries a ghost.
A living person marries a ghost. Okay.
Historically, the sources mentioned this was maybe more common among richer families than nobility.
And the sources focus on one scenario particularly, right? A deceased woman marrying a living man. Something about a red envelope.
Yes, exactly. There's a specific mechanism described, particularly in connection with rural Taiwan. If an unmarried woman dies, her family, wanting her spirit to be married off, might leave a red envelope in a public place.
Where exactly?
Places like roadsides, paths, busy areas. Somewhere someone's likely to find it.
Just a red envelope lying there. You see it. Maybe think someone dropped some lucky money. You bend down, pick it up.
And boom. According to the tradition described in these sources, you've just accepted a proposal. The first unmarried man who picks up that envelope is considered chosen. He's the groom.
Just by picking it up. Seriously. What's in the envelope that triggers this?
Well, the sources say it's not just money, though there might be some paper money. Often it has a hairpin that belonged to the woman. And sometimes personal things like strands of her hair or nail clippings.
Nail clippings. Okay,
Yeah.
that's Wow, so you pick up this envelope, find that inside, and suddenly you're engaged to a ghost. What happens then? Can you say no?
Well, the belief system described is pretty powerful. Accepting the marriage is supposed to bring good fortune to everyone involved, her family, his family, but refusing.
Yeah.
Refusing is said to bring really bad luck, continuous misfortune, basically, for the guy who found it and turned it down.
That is intense pressure. Imagine that. Walking along, see an envelope, and suddenly you're facing that choice. Knowing what the sources say about the consequences, what would you even do? It's a real predicament.
It really is. Now, the sources do clarify some things about this living ghost marriage. Unlike the ghost version, the living person doesn't, die or get buried with the deceased.
Well, that's a relief, I guess.
A small one, maybe. And importantly, the sources say the living man can usually still marry a living woman later on.
Oh, okay. So he could have a normal marriage too.
Yes, but here's the catch. The deceased ghost wife is considered the main wife, the first wife. Any living wife he marries later is the minor wife.
The minor wife. So the living wife has to play second fiddle to a ghost.
Essentially, yes. She's expected to show respect, deference to the deceased first wife.
That sounds complicated and potentially quite creepy day to day. Did the sources mention anything else, like spooky stuff happening afterwards?
They hint at it, yeah. Without going into huge detail, the implication is that even though you're not, in the grave with her, strange things might still happen. The spiritual connection is real and active in the living person's life.
Right. It doesn't just end with the ceremony.
Apparently not.
Oh.
And the sources also briefly mention the other way around, a deceased man marrying a living woman.
Ooh. How did that work?
It seems less detailed in what we read, but the gist is the woman becomes part of the deceased man's family. She's like a daughter-in-law, expected to care for his parents. And here's another disturbing part.
Go on.
The sources suggest she might even be expected to have children with one of his male relatives, like a brother or cousin, to carry on his family line.
Wow. That adds a whole other layer of just really difficult ethical issues. So is this all just ancient history now? Or does ghost marriage still happen?
Oh, it definitely still happens. The sources are clear on that. Even though authorities have tried to crack down on it, it persists.
Yes.
Secretly, often, especially in rural parts of northern and central China.
Which areas?
Places like Shaanxi, Gansu, Henan provinces get mentioned specifically in the sources.
And it's not just limited to China, right? Didn't the sources mention that recent story from Japan?
Yes. That was really interesting. January 2024, so very recent. Apparently, a Japanese man found one of these red envelopes near a train station in Tokyo, Ueno Okachimachi Station.
In Tokyo. Okay.
Yeah. And he posted about it online, like on X or something, maybe just curious, thinking he found some lost money.
And people knew what it was.
Instantly. Japanese netizens jumped in, warning him. They recognized it straight away as being linked to the ghost marriage tradition from Taiwan.
So that red envelope thing is like a known signal, even internationally, it seems.
Yeah.
Did the story mention any way out if you pick one up by mistake?
It did, actually. According to the source covering that incident, the advice was, if you find one and want out, you should put it back, but not empty-handed.
Meaning?
You should put some money inside it first. The source mentioned about 400 yen, maybe around 1,000 Thai baht equivalent. And then you say a specific phrase.
What phrase?
It translates roughly as, hope you find someone good.
Hope you find someone good, not just anyone. Interesting. So again, picture it. You've picked up the envelope, you know the deal now. Mm-hmm. Where'd you try that? Put the money in, say the words. It's such a strange mix of old beliefs and modern life.
Definitely makes you think. But, as weird and frankly creepy as the beliefs themselves are, the sources point to something much, much darker that has grown out of this tradition.
Which is?
Crime. Serious crime. Including murder.
Okay, that's where this story takes a truly disturbing turn. Why? Why has crime gotten tangled up with ghost marriage?
It seems to boil down to supply and demand, essentially. The belief persists, so the demand for deceased brides is still there in some areas, but finding suitable female corpses isn't easy.
Especially with, as the source has mentioned, things like gender imbalance historically in China.
Exactly. Fewer women means fewer potential deceased brides naturally available. So finding a body becomes difficult, and that makes it profitable. Very profitable.
How profitable are we talking?
The sources mention figures, like a body for a ghost marriage could cost at least 150,000 yuan.
150,000 yuan. What's that in?
Roughly 750,000 Thai baht. Maybe around 20,000 US dollars, give or take. It's a huge amount.
For a corpse. Wow. And families will pay that.
Some families, desperate to follow the tradition and ensure peace for their deceased sons, yes. According to the sources, they're willing to pay.
And that kind of money, it inevitably leads to crime, doesn't it?
Absolutely. The sources list some horrifying ways bodies are sourced for this underground market.
Like what?
Well, sometimes poor families might actually sell the body of a daughter who died. Then there's grave robbing.
Stealing bodies from cemeteries.
Yes, specifically targeting female corpses, digging them up, sometimes even taking the bodies of women who were already married and buried.
That's horrific.
It is. They also mention buying unclaimed bodies from hospitals sometimes, but the absolute worst part
I'm almost afraid to ask.
is murder. The sources explicitly state people have been murdered specifically to sell their bodies as ghost brides.
Killing someone just for their corpse to be used in a ghost wedding. That's beyond comprehension.
It's truly chilling. The sources mention reports of over 10 murder cases linked to this in China. There was one specific case detailed from Gansu province. A man killed 2 women who had mental illnesses just to sell their bodies. He was caught and executed.
Unbelievable.
And there was another horrifying story mentioned about a girl supposedly pressured by her own family to poison her sister, again, to sell the body.
By her own family. That's just, there are no words.
It really shows you why the authorities see this practice as forbidden. It's not just about old beliefs anymore. As the sources point out, it leads directly to people dying, to bodies being desecrated in the most awful ways.
So this ancient tradition started perhaps with intentions of honoring the dead, protecting the living.
Okay.
It's become twisted into something that fuels terrible crimes today.
Yeah. It's a really stark, kind of tragic example, isn't it? How these deeply rooted beliefs, mixed with economic factors and this specific demand, can just spiral into something incredibly dark. Serious crime, violations of basic human rights. It really makes you question where tradition ends and, well, basic morality begins in the modern world.
It absolutely does. And maybe just one final reminder, based on those sources,
Yeah.
about those red envelopes. If you ever happen to be somewhere like China or Taiwan, and you see one just left lying around in public, well, now you know what it might mean. It's not just lost money.
Definitely something to be aware of, yeah.
It really is. It leaves you with that question, doesn't it? Faced with that situation, what would you actually do? Anyway, thank you for joining us as we explore this unsettling story from the sources you provided.
Goodbye for now.